everybody, and welcome to the Elseworlds Exchange, and may the 4th be with you. I am Sal.
And I am Joel, better known as Cape Joel. I'm kind of your Chewbacca, right? I mean, if this show is the Millennium Falcon and you're Han, I guess I'm chewing.
I mean, if we are doing the show, if we're going to talk about Star Wars, I mean, I got my blaster, I got my Bespin, or my Endor poster, I got my Rancor. I'm ready to rock, man. May the 4th.
This show is ready to do the Kessel Run, man.
That's right. We will do it in less than 12 parsecs, which for some reason is a unit of distance, but we'll use it to explain the speed of the ship.
It's funny because we have this new Star Wars continuity and all the comics and all this other stuff to tie it. I really hope in one of the comics, Han just has to come clean and go, "Yeah, I made that parsec shit up. I had no idea."
No, they explain it.
I was trying to impress you.
Oh no, they explain it. Like I think the idea, or at least before all of the Disney stuff, pre-Disney and kind of pre-prequel. They had explained that, I think that it was that the Kessel Run was adjacent to a gravity well, and so Han shaves time and space off of the run by flying dangerously close to the gravity well, and he needs to be a fast ship to escape its gravity, but it also is a shorter distance. Like it's like cutting the curve of a racetrack. But if that racetrack had like a black hole in it, and you needed to be fast enough to escape its gravity.
And only Han could do it because Han is such an uber badass.
Yeah. There's that theory. I'm sure there's wormhole theories and all kinds of other stuff. I never gave a crap.
Because it's just a cool thing to say. It's only when someone smarter comes in and says, well, actually.
Yeah, parsecs are unit of distance. And thankfully, I was only friends with nerds, so I heard that crap all the time. What's amazing is my nerd friends also didn't give a shit. They were like, well, who cares? It's Star Wars. I love it. I don't care.
Han and the Kessel Run is like Spider-Man and swinging from webs. I don't care how he does it. I just care that he does it.
Yeah. Oh my God. When people started poking holes in that boat, where Spider-Man well, if his webbing is strong as it is elastic, it would stretch infinitely. I'm like, shut up.
By far the worst culmination of that was in the Amazing Spider-Man series, when they devote a good chunk of time to showing you how it could theoretically work, and then having two nerds in the movie stop and have a conversation. I'm like, this makes me angry. I'm mad that you devoted this much time to this.
You don't even bother. Just...
There's another topic for the list. In time for Homecoming, we got to talk about Spider-Man.
Spider-Man movies and a Spider-Man show. That's a good one. I'm going to put that on the list. But yeah, we're talking about Star Wars, everybody. So if you are in the chat and you like Star Wars, or if you're watching this after the fact, we're talking about Star Wars. And let me tell you, May the 4th. I remember this is a relatively new nerd holiday.
It is. It's because I'm glad you brought that up, Sal, because I wanted to say that. Do you think it's good that we celebrate May the 4th, or is there something kind of creepy about the fact that we've all thrown behind what is ultimately this super, super commercialized thing now?
Yeah, I outright rejected it. When it first occurred, and I still kind of reject. I don't watch Star Wars on May the 4th. I don't wish people May the 4th on a yearly basis. But
Jedi is not our religion. We like it, but
especially now that we know what Jedi are. After the prequels, I wanted to distance myself from Jedi as much as humanly possible.
You mean you don't like this creepy monk priesthood thing that they have going on?
No, I don't. I liked the concept behind the Jedi when it was implied, when there were 4 words said about the whole damn religion. Yoda's whole mysticism thing. The way that it evolved from Star Wars, Obi-Wan shows up and he's like, yeah, man, you gotta be a Jedi. We got cool fucking toys. We get to wear these badass robes. By the way, the outfit that Obi-Wan wears when he's on Tatooine, that ain't a Jedi robe. That's a thing that everyone who lives on Tatooine wears because it's hot as balls out there.
Mm-hmm. Just like if you lived in a real desert.
Yeah, it's legit, Owen wears the same freaking outfit. That's just what people wear on Tatooine, and then people just associated Obi-Wan and his outfit with what Jedi wear, and then George was like, yeah, they all wear those.
Of course. Why else would he wear
Why would they wear moisture-wicking robes everywhere, in the vacuum of space? It doesn't... No. But anyway, that's one of the many problems that I have with the prequels, of course, and that's a prequel. Prequels is an episode, but, this is more of a celebration.
It's kind of funny that we're doing this one, because if people remember the very first Elseworld Exchange, kind of exploded from just Sal and me talking about science fiction stuff, and Sal had the idea, well, shit, let's just turn the camera on for this stuff, and that was like 28 episodes ago.
28
now
episodes.
I know this because you finally updated the SoundCloud. And I'm like, oh wow, we've been doing this for almost 30 episodes.
That's right. Yeah, it is literally on SoundCloud. If you go to soundcloud.com/ComicPOP, boom, it's right there. I'll also include a link in the description box below this video if you want to like listen to the show instead of watching it. Although I do implore you to watch it because this video is monetized. But yeah, like it's funny because I remember you saying, you know, like we did the first episode about Star Wars, I don't know, and I'm like, no, we didn't dedicate a whole episode to Star Wars.
It evolved into Firefly and other stuff.
Yeah, it's more about science fiction through the lens of The Force Awakens having become a thing. Like, it's coming into being. We didn't even get to see the movie yet. We were still anticipating what Force Awakens could be, and we kind of talked about, like, science fiction elements that birthed out of Star Wars, out of our fandom for Star Wars. What else did we find and enjoy? But yeah, this is just a whole Star Wars centric episode. We're not one specific thing, but I think more about like Star Wars and fandom, which I think is going to be probably the crux of the episode. Just like our enjoyment / fandom for Star Wars,
because that's all May the 4th is. It's, you know, it's a fan day is really what it is.
Yeah, it's a legitimate celebration of the thing that exists in Star Wars. It's funny because I outright rejected it as a nerd. I'm like, May the 4th be with you. So you're taking a kind of derogatory impression of a nerd, that is to say, like using a lisp and having them say the Force, but it's the 4th, and it just, for me, it rubbed me the whole wrong way. But I have a real problem with hallmarkification of holidays. Like, I dig certain holidays that like transcend its commercialism, or
like Christmas.
Yeah, like Christmas, or like celebrates its commercialism, like Christmas. You know, where it's like,
or
no,
Halloween even.
Buy shit and people will love you and it will celebrate togetherness. I'm down for that. Or, hey, let's eat everything on the table. Like, I'm totally down for these holidays.
Like American Thanksgiving.
Yes, but there are other holidays that I really hate. Like, there's one coming up here called Mother's Day, which I outright loathe. I hate Mother's Day.
If you're a good son, every day should be Mother's Day.
Right? But, like, for me, Mother's Day is the worst holiday, or at least it's one of the worst holidays, because, number one, manufactured.
Because Sal hates moms.
I hate my mom. No, it's manufactured, it's forced, it's bullshit, it's made up, it's fake. That's number one. Has no roots in anything except, like, do you love your mom? Show her on this day.
It's a greeting card created thing. We need to sell more cards and flowers and candy around this time. So it was arbitrarily picked to at random.
Because, like, you know what Mother's Day is? Your mom's birthday. That's Mother's Day. Like, that's when you celebrate your mom's birthday. Because if you don't have a mom, you don't celebrate Mother's Day. So that's the day.
And even if you don't have a mother, I'm sure you have plenty of mother figures in your life who you should also be, you know, showering.
They have a birthday, and you could just celebrate it then. But for me, it's the worst because, like, if you put, like, okay, so as a son or as a person who has to celebrate Mother's Day, who's obliged to celebrate it, you have to come up with another gift for a mother figure, which is impossible, and then you have to show up and do some awkward dinner thing that either a father figure or father has to arrange, and it's just bogus. And then you put yourself in the position of the mother, right? You're the mom, and you have to endure your hapless, inane family tripping over themselves trying to celebrate you, even though they don't really want to. Like, nobody, everyone feels obligated to do something. Nobody wants to.
Accepted,
like, like Mother's Day should be a day where mothers get to fuck off. Like, really. They take their shit and they go for the day.
Go somewhere.
Or everybody else goes away. You know, like, Mother's Day should be, leave your poor mother the fuck alone for a day. Because she goddamn deserves it. Like, but, you know, and that's a day. Like, that's a day that you can arbitrarily pick and put on the calendar. And it doesn't have to take the place of a birthday. Because birthdays, you know what? Like, if you want to celebrate your birthday by yourself, that's fine. But... you know, some people like to celebrate birthdays with family and loved ones or friends, so don't ruin a birthday with that. But Mother's Day is just a day where it's like, Mom, here's some goddamn money. Get out of here. Or I'll get out of here.
Treat yourself, yeah.
Treat yourself. That's what I like about, like, if Mother's Day were that, if my mom were in on that, you know, adage, I think we'd all be okay. But unfortunately, my mom wants to have dinner in Newark, New Jersey, so off I go on Sunday for a Newark dinner.
At least it's not Life Day. Let's look at it that way. At least we have May the 4th and not Life Day.
I like Life Day. I think that's a better idea. I think
it's
celebrating
more inside.
Life Day is a way better joke because number one, it has its roots in Star Wars. It's kind of niche because not everyone has seen the Star Wars Holiday Special, and God bless you for not watching it because it really is unwatchable. It will take about a couple of days off your life. It is.
I did it. I did it last year. I did a whole big commentary track on it.
It's unfucking watchable. I watched it in high school back before you could watch it on YouTube, and it required access to basement Comic-Cons and backwards dealing, like legitimate, like, do you have tape trading? Do you have the Star Wars Holiday Special? Yeah, I've got the Star Wars Holiday Special. Well, listen,
I'll trade you a copy of this Justice League TV movie that ran one time.
I'll give you the Roger Corman Fantastic Four movie for the Star Wars Holiday Special. Then you put it in, and you got to endure boring as hell Union commercials and the terrible goddamn special itself, which features the first 20 minutes of uninterrupted Wookiee conversations with no subtitles. It's the worst thing ever. But you also get to
Itchy, Stinky, and Mala.
But you also get Carrie Fisher totally high on drugs,
just gacked out of it. It's
just
great.
Totally destroyed. That would be like, that's kind of fun.
Were hard on that woman.
Yeah, she kind of asked for it.
That being said, she also cleaned herself up pretty good. I mean, look at her in Force Awakens now. It's like, good to see you're still kicking, Carrie.
Exactly. No, I respect the shit out of Carrie Fisher in some regards. But
I guess that is a good topic for Star Wars. There are a lot of people, and there's plenty of evidence to prove this, that if your name wasn't Harrison Ford, Star Wars basically destroyed your movie career.
Yeah, I mean, I think that bad decisions could destroy your movie career. Like, Mark Hamill fucking made it work, but
Mark Hamill had a terrible motorcycle crash at some point in between, too.
Yeah, he needed Star Wars. Like, there's no doubt about it. Mark Hamill is such a talented man, and so great, and he's so awesome, and he's a
true nerd, too.
He's the perfect celebrity. He's the perfect person to like in the like Hollywood scheme. But he really, really needed that because making Guyver movies and Wing Commander voiceovers are not going to pay the
I forgot he was in Guyver and Wing Commander.
James Earl Jones made it out, Nick V, but James Earl Jones had a career before Star Wars.
It's true, and also he wasn't really in the movie. His voice was in the movie.
Yeah, he could have been anybody. Like they could have called like Tim Curry if George Lucas had seen Rocky Horror Picture Show.
That's true. And obviously, of course, I mean, he had a great second career, Mark Hamill, as a voice actor and as the best Joker ever. But we're saying as far as movies go,
yes, I mean, like I would take Mark Hamill just as a Joker any day of the week, but he needed the cloud of Star Wars to like to launch his star.
It's scary to think of the road not traveled. Imagine if he didn't get in that motorcycle accident.
Then it would have been Tim Curry.
Then it would have been Tim Curry, and imagine if he had stayed in movies.
Oh, yeah. Well, he wouldn't have for very long.
You don't think he was that great an actor?
I think Mark Hamill's a fun actor. I don't think he had the chops.
He's not Sir Laurence Olivier.
He's not even Harrison Ford. Like
Harrison Ford played the same guy in every movie.
Harrison Ford's played the same guy for like the last 25 years. But Carrie Fisher is another one who tried and she got out. Like she was in Harry Met Sally. She was in a bunch of other movies. In fact, she has one of my favorite lines from When Harry Met Sally, which is, if you've never seen When Harry Met Sally, by the way, it's a lovely rom-com. It subverts the genre, kind of plays with it a little bit. It kind of redefined what rom-coms would be. Like, every cliche you know about a rom-com was created by movies like When Harry Met Sally, which was like a subversion of the genre. But there's a moment where Carrie Fisher and her boyfriend are having an argument about a really, really hideous wagon wheel coffee table. It's legitimately like a wagon wheel from like the old like West, and it's got glass on top of it, and they're moving in together, and she's like, this has to go, and he's like, this came with me, this survived so many years, like this is mine, and I'm never gonna part with it. And Harry and Sally get into an argument. That's Billy Crystal and Meg Ryan, and they get into a huge argument, a huge blowout, and they leave. And Harry like just loses his mind, and he's just like, they will, you're just gonna be arguing over what's mine and what's yours, like you're gonna be arguing over this stupid, hideous Roy Rogers wagon wheel coffee table. And then he leaves, and then they both go, and then the two of them like kind of, Carrie Fisher and her boyfriend kind of like unite and hug and like kind of connect over their dysfunction. And she says, tenderly and with love in her heart, I just want you to know that no matter what, I will never like that coffee table. And I'm like, that's fucking gold. Like, this chick's got chops. Right, and just Star Wars in general, Star Wars A New Hope, Carrie Fisher had it.
Oh, yeah.
She couldn't, every line by Carrie Fisher in the original Star Wars is gold. Like,
we see her first before like any of the other heroes. We
first
see her
main character we see. Her speech is a little stiff, but it's also written by George Lucas, so we got to give it a pass. But she also
George
says,
Lucas, who as we found out much later, was not an actor's director.
Not so much. Although it's funny, we've heard stories and we just chose not to believe them about his directorial style. If you've never heard the stories about George Lucas directing Han, Luke, and Leia in the original Star Wars, the line, he never said like, okay, in this scene, you're just distraught, you're ruined over the loss of your planet, but you have to keep it inside because you're royalty, and you can't give away the location of the hidden base, so you got to keep it all together. Like, no, he just said faster and more intense. That was
which is great direction.
That was his direction. And by the way, like, I will say, it worked because the movie is intense and the characters do like really give their lines pretty fast, and it's kind of gold. Like, they almost skip over any bad lines, like any lines that might be considered like or like that wasn't really that great. They just zip through it. So you're just having so much fun. You're not even thinking about the stupid things they're saying. I don't know. So, yeah, I think Carrie Fisher would have survived. But, so, Joel, here's my question to you, man.
Yes.
Favorite one from the original trilogy?
Oof. I mean, it's hard to pick because, I mean, these movies are cultural touchstones. They changed pop culture. They helped create nerd culture and the identity that we know of. I mean, heck, our younger fans might not realize this, but these movies were so molten hot back in the day. You couldn't get the t-shirt and the merchandise. You had to send away for the action figures, and they're like, yeah, we promise you'll have them by Christmas. We're working on them.
Yeah. It's funny. We'll get back to this question in a second because I want to talk about, like, let's talk about being fans of Star Wars. Mm-hmm. I was a fan of Star Wars back when it was really not cool. And I'm
a little younger than you.
Yeah.
So.
When people really considered Star Wars to be a depreciating asset. Yeah. There were Star Wars magazines, but they were lame and nobody cared. And, like, I remember they still made toys, but it was hard to find, and you had to go like through magazines and crap to grab. Like, if you wanted a Star Wars shirt, you either had to go to a card game store or a hobby shop, or like, I don't know, even like crappy stores like Hot Topic didn't have Star Wars shirts back then.
Which, yeah, that's another thing too. You want to talk about how nerd culture has gone mainstream now. It's hard not to find Star Wars shirts and merchandise.
You can literally get any Star Wars shirt you want. You want a Boba Fett shirt? You want a Kylo Ren shirt? You want a shirt of Ponda Baba? You got it. You want a fucking...
the more obscure, the better.
You want a Mamanadon tree ornament? You got it, man. I got two. It's come to the point where you're almost punished for being a huge fan because there's no secret corners left.
It's true. Star Wars helped create the whole like merchandising thing. It revolutionized it. It was never a thing before. They were the first to be like, no, we're shirts and lunchboxes and playing cards and everything.
Yeah, it's true. I remember when it was fun to scavenge for Star Wars merchandise. Because
just some guy with the mustache got it perfectly. Yes, Spaceballs the game. Spaceballs the bit. You're right. Yep, that's it.
Yeah, well, Spaceballs is a perfect distillation of kind of like what Star Wars would eventually become.
A parody of itself.
A parody of itself, and also like it didn't go far enough, but that's why it's so great. Like, Spaceballs doesn't make every joke at the movie's expense. It becomes kind of its own animal, which I kind of really appreciate.
Much like the great parody movies do, something that would be picked up later by the likes of Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead and all.
Oh my god, yeah. So yeah, what's your favorite Star or what? Before we get to there, what was the first Star Wars movie you ever saw?
Believe it or not, it was my mother who started me on them because she was a fan of them. And it's just like, oh, I think you'll dig this. So, she showed me A New Hope. And I think I was a little too young to get it at the time. I didn't really appreciate it when I first saw it. It wasn't until later on where I really, really got into it. And it's just so many great things you could name because they're part of our culture. Luke doing the run along the Death Star there and blowing it up for the first time. The sage advice of Yoda and everything, with these eternal words to live by: do or do not, there is no try.
Yeah.
Such great stuff. I love you, I know.
Yeah. Oh my God. Well, and of course, all like the secret lines that you or secrets about making the movie that you didn't you would hear from other people, and you weren't sure.
I got into later, the story behind it, when I really started to get into film and movies, and that made me respect it even more, where you're like, wow, this was basically an indie film made on nothing but dreams and hope.
Yeah. It's funny, I was actually thinking about that recently, because I loved, what was it? It was, I loved the phenomenon of Star Wars later. I was shown Empire Strikes Back for the first time when I was a kid, like a very, very young kid. It was on television, and my parents were like, "Come in here, you might enjoy this." And it was the assault on Hoth, and I thought it was so boring. And I'm like, no. And my parents like, stick around, give it a minute, And we get to Dagobah, and it's like they're just talking and running through the woods. I'm like, this is so boring. I have no interest in this. And then I went to my friend's house, and his parents had all the Star Wars action figures from the 70s and 80s, and all like all the like they had an AT-AT, and they had a TIE fighter, they had the Falcon, like they had all these fucking toys, and we used to play with them because we were, children with action figures, and we would create these scenarios and these events, these stories, and I'm like, wait, what actually happens though? Like, what are these? What's the story that these figures are supposed to tell? And so we would watch Star Wars as we would play with these action figures, and then I'd be like, I would
try and learn the lore,
but I'd also be like, well, let's take breaks. Like, well, what if this happened instead? And then we'd go in another direction entirely with the figures from that story, and it was just kind of like it organically became a part of who I was, even though I didn't really consciously enjoy Star Wars. Like I forced myself to like it because I wanted to use my imagination, and then as I became a teenager, and I met some of the people who would define who I am as a person, they were like, I love Star Wars. And I'm like, okay, well, let's get back into it. Let's see how Star Wars is again. And I'm like, oh, this is and it hit me at just the right time. Like 14, I watched Star Wars again, and I'm like, oh, I get it now. And of course, because I used to play with like my friend with action figures at like age 9, 10, 11, we would just, the movies were recorded, even if I wasn't consciously watching them. So I'd be watching them being like, that's what that means? Or like, oh, that's what was happening during that scene? And like, you'd be thinking about the dialogue, and then you'd be thinking about the subtext, and then you'd be thinking about the story behind the story, and not necessarily about like what George was doing, but more about like, what's that puppet's character, and what's he doing? What's his story?
And that's the other thing, merchandise and kind of being a blessing for Star Wars. Every character in the background of the cantina and every weird little puppet, you can bet had at least a paragraph long entry in the Star Wars Wikipedia.
Oh yeah, and pre-Wikipedia, you had to buy these Star Wars books, these like large character books that were like unofficial, and they had total bios of the characters and their race name and what they were really like from, and the planet that they were from, and like there would always be like one sentence that tied it in with the movie, and you'd just be completely dedicated to to figuring out the whole lore. It was like an adolescent anthropology project where you're just digging through this culture, trying to figure it all out. The
world of Star Wars, I think, is its greatest, one of the greatest things it had going for it is that because they wrote so much, and obviously they would come in and retcon stuff later, but it felt like a lived-in world.
Oh, yeah. I mean, for me, that was the beginning of a lived-in science fiction world, which is, of course, like hand in hand with science fiction. Like that's
a dirty, grimy science fiction world too.
Yeah, lived in, old, broken, like almost like our world might even be better by comparison when you compare it to this. So yeah, the first one I ever saw was Empire. You saw A New Hope for the first time. Which one was your favorite after you got through them?
Well, I mean, obviously it's hard to divorce how I felt then from how I feel now. Where, I mean, a lot of people will tell you, and it's hard to argue, where they're like, Empire Strikes Back, maybe the greatest sequel, if not one of the greatest sequels of all time.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, like one of the greatest nerd movies of all time. So much of what we think is Star Wars is taken from that movie. The "Luke, I am your father," all those other amazing quotes that are taken from that one.
Yep, every Yoda line, every Vader line. Vader doesn't, I argue Vader doesn't even really, like, Vader's interesting or scary, but Vader doesn't get cool until Empire.
It's true. I mean, he was just a henchman. He was just a heavy in the first one.
Yeah. I mean, he was clearly the main villain. He's the antagonist of A New Hope, but he says some cryptic things, and he kills Obi-Wan Kenobi, and that's kind of it. And then he gets, like, knocked out of orbit by Han Solo, and you just move on. And, like...
knocked into space, where he was probably just floating out there for a long time until someone picked him up.
Yeah. Then we get to Empire, and they're like, Vader's cool, and here's why. And let's get into it. My favorite when I was growing up was Return of the Jedi. And the reason was because it looked the best...
It did.
And it had the most going on. The space battle couldn't be beat. It had Jabba. It was like taking the Cantina scene and turning it up to 11, the Jabba sequence.
What great build-up to Jabba until they ruined it with the special editions and everything, where it's like, Jabba's looking for, Jabba, who is this Jabba guy? And you built him up in your mind what you thought he looked like, then you finally saw him and it completely subverted your expectation. You're like, oh, he's a weird slug gangster man.
Yeah, I remember my brother once, when the re-releases came out in '97. I asked my brother what his favorite what his favorite character from Star Wars was, and he's like, Jabba the Hutt. And I'm like, why? He's horrible. He's an evil space slug. He goes, well, the guy clearly eats well. He's surrounded by women. Yeah. He clearly got like a couple hundred years, and then he's choked to death by a woman in a bikini. I mean, I can't imagine a better way to go out. And I'm like,
solid. That's solid reasoning.
I'm like, everything about you completely crystallized in that one moment.
Plus, he's the most fun character to imitate.
I love using my Jabba quotes when it comes to my fat cat Zoe. Whenever she comes in the room, I'm like, ho 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 ho.
Best laugh. It's
like evil slug Santa.
It really is. Also, I mean, Jabba's palace scene. Just so great there. I mean, obviously, there's the stuff with the band where it's like what the band used to be and what the band is now.
Yeah, Cy Snoodles and
What a great name, Cy Snoodles.
Cy Snoodles. And Max Rebo. Cy Snoodles was the lead singer in Max Rebo's band.
Yeah, there you go.
Anyway.
Chang Chang's in a
No, Cy Snoodles sang in the original one too.
I know.
And that was Lop Tinek, if I remember correctly.
It was.
And, but I miss Figurin Dan and the Modal Nodes. I liked those are the alien, like the large-headed characters from the Cantina.
I mean, geez, we could do a whole thing just about how great the music is in Star Wars, and that helped. Not even just the John Williams score, which is immortalized now.
That was one of the few albums that I needed to own, as opposed to things that I was like, oh, I might want to own that someday. I went to Costco and I got this huge box that had every album, or A New Hope, Empire, Jedi, and then bonus music that you wouldn't normally get, but came with this anyway. And it had deleted scene music, and it had extended versions of things. It had extra Cantina songs. I was like, this is amazing.
They did a disco version of the main Star Wars theme, and that was a one-hit wonder hit for a little bit.
Oh, I believe it. Well, yeah, disco back then, definitely.
Just take that classic dun 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 dun, put a disco thing under it. There you go, instant hit.
Okay, Star Wars, it's so big, it's hard to be like, let's do the Star Wars show. Let's talk about Star Wars and the millions of space critters and the, decades of continuity and the expanded universe, and then the Legends version of that, and then like the shows
Which
and the
for
cartoons.
those wondering, the Legends version is basically the old continuity before Disney bought it and changed stuff around.
Yes. Yeah, of course, Nimrod mentioned Bill Murray's lounge singer version of the Star Wars theme.
That was the thing.
You're putting lyrics to songs that don't have lyrics. Yeah, when I grew up under Star Wars, I got into the universe. I got into the lore.
I like that under Star Wars. I studied under Star Wars.
Exactly. I lived under the umbrella of Star Wars, and it's funny because I remember there being books, and there were a couple that I remember being recommended. When I first found out there were books after getting into the movies and stuff, I'm like, oh shit, there's books? And I grabbed one because I'm like, they all got to be like Star Wars. And I picked up Truce at Bakura, and I went, never again. And I threw it away. And then my friends were like, no, you have to be careful. You have to get them only the ones that say Zahn on them.
Yeah, Timothy Zahn.
And that's when you found out about the Heir to the Empire trilogy by Timothy Zahn. And you're like, oh, this is where Admiral Thrawn comes into play. This is where Mara Jade shows up. This is
the
where
true sequels that aren't true anymore.
this is where the Coruscant was invented.
Mm.
When Coruscant was referenced in the prequels and then established, that was a Timothy Zahn invention. So we were like, okay, cool. Lucas read the Zahn books. We're gonna see shit like what we saw in the Zahn books. No,
Never.
By the way, early New York Comic Cons, Timothy Zahn went to a couple. And back then, fewer people went to those cons, and so like you could just wander right up to Timothy Zahn. And we have a book. We have one of the. We have a couple books signed by Zahn. I don't know where the hell they are, but we took some pictures with him, and we took one with me. I'm standing with Zahn. I'm like, this is Timothy fucking Zahn. He created Thrawn, and we're just standing there. That's the picture. Then Tiffany gets in the picture, and he's like, he puts his hand on her back, and he's like. I'm like, what are you doing, son?
Again, my chat is a little behind. I couldn't see the movement that you made.
Oh, he slid his hand down a little bit. I'm like, whoa, son!
Naughty, Timothy.
Yeah. By the way, and he never like went all the way and like groped anything, but
he wasn't Hong Kong.
No, but he certainly didn't like take liberties with my back. Let's tell me that. And I mentioned Jorah Kaboath, and he didn't even blink an eye.
And he didn't give me nothing, man.
Yeah, exactly. What the hell? Oh, sure.
Play favorites, why don't you?
Yeah, what the hell? But yeah, I read Heir to the Empire and the rest of them, and then that's kind of it. Like I read a couple of like those awful Kevin J. Anderson books, like the Tales from the Cantina and the Bounty Hunter stories.
Yeah, I was gonna say, who's the lady who wrote all those Mandalorian books, and in her mind, the Mandalorians are the true heroes of the Star Wars
That's
universe?
a great question. I do not know. I'll have to look that up, actually.
She calls her fans Fandalorians, and in her books, in her books, the Mandalorians are the true power in the universe, not the Jedi, not the Sith, but them.
That's freaking bizarre.
Yeah.
I liked the idea of Mandalorians being like Imperial bloodhounds that sniffed out the Force, but I don't know. Mandalorian's not the true power in the universe. I will say,
according to this lady.
Yeah. Can we talk a little bit about what we thought the prequels were going to be?
There's a good idea.
Because there was a time when we existed before the prequels, and all we had were books, and Lucas had a mandate out that said you can write any fucking sequel you want. You can talk about you can go as far back as 5 years before A New Hope.
Yeah.
But you can't tell anything about what happened before, or you can go back 1,000 years. You could do like the New Jedi or like the old Republic,
Knights of the Old Republic, which is also great in its own.
Yes, it was
right.
But you can't do the prequels. You can't like cover that ground in any way
because I want to do it.
And so there was a lot of expectation, and there was like this magazine I had that like had a whole rundown of what we were expecting to see, what we'll probably see, and they were like, "Here's some things that we're gonna see." Nothing came true from that magazine.
Pretty much.
One of them was that Anakin was supposed to fall into a molten pit. Like an industrial, like, molten pit, like not a volcano.
Like the Joker, he would fall into some acid.
Exactly. Another was that Boba Fett was supposed to be, like, was supposed to have helped Vader hunt down and destroy the Jedi. Another was that the Mandalorian Super Commandos were going to be really, really important, and that they were involved in the Clone Wars. That, like, the Clone Wars were actually a fight between the Jedi and the Mandalorians. There's a lot of, like, expectations, and just, yep, we lost Joel.
I'll talk to you.
We were supposed to have these Mandalorians. Joel, you back?
Yeah, I'm back now.
All right,
that
cool.
was weird.
There's no video, but you're back.
Karen Travis is the lady who likes those, or who wrote those books, and she didn't like me talking crap about the Mandalorians. she sent a Mando hit squad after me right now.
She sent the Fets.
Yeah, the Fet squad.
Yeah.
It's not the mod squad, it's the Fet squad.
Right. But there's a lot of there were a lot of expectations and hopes and dreams, of course, that the prequels were going to deliver on.
They never could, you know. It's like, obviously they were bad, but also maybe our expectations were too high at the same time.
It was an insurmountable task to make a prequel to Star Wars, even though
it was an insurmountable task, and a task older George was not up for.
No. Well, the thing was, he only had directed 3 movies, and the last one was Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, you kind of needed to have some experience doing that, and it was obvious from, like, actor interviews way back in the day that he wasn't really that great of a director even back then.
Yeah.
So it was just kind of like, I don't know. I mean, like, yeah, let's not talk about the prequels. That's a whole episode.
Yeah. This is a celebration
Makes me sad.
show, is what this is. We're talking about what we love about Star Wars and what makes us happy about it. Now, on the continuity thing, because obviously we're continuity people and we love talking about it. Star Wars was the first time I ever saw a tiered continuity system where this is G continuity. This comes from George Lucas himself. This is expanded universe continuity, and then it just goes lower and lower. Like, this is video game continuity. This is
And it's funny because I remember there used to be like a special like a logo that went on books that George Lucas himself signed off on.
I remember that he put his stamp of approval on your canon and your canon.
Exactly. Let's talk a little bit about, apropos that, the phenomenon that was Shadows of the Empire.
I think a lot of people don't even remember what that is now. It's been so long.
Shadows of the Empire was almost the title of The Force Awakens. It was called Shadow of the Empire. Mm-hmm. And then they were like, there's a huge thing that's called that. Don't use it. And they were like, all right.
Fine then.
Fine. But Shadows of the Empire was this really, really cool thing, and it was amazing for it to have come out around the same time that I really, really went full Star Wars. And it was this notion from the Lucas camp that was, let's do everything that we would do if we were releasing a movie.
Yeah.
Except
Only
for the movie.
We won't have a movie, but we'll have a whole push attached to it. We'll have games, and we'll have comics, and we'll have all sorts of stuff.
We will, this will be like the first formal Lucas sanctioned, like, this. If anything is in question, Shadows of the Empire fucking happened. And it had an N64 game, it had a comic book series, it had trading cards, it had new characters, it was
a whole rollout.
It was a whole rollout, a soundtrack. Not by John Williams, of course, a little too pricey for a soundtrack for no movie that doesn't exist. But the soundtrack for Shadows is pretty good, and you can catch it on YouTube if you type in Shadows of the Empire soundtrack. It's pretty good. Like, it's a great way, if you're ever making a Star Wars fan film, just grab some of that, throw that in there. People be like, whoa!
Are you saying we're gonna go make a Star Wars fan film, just you, me, and all the other guys from the Weekly Poll?
There is no way you could get me to do a Star Wars fan film now.
Hey, we could kickstart that. I'm pretty sure the fans would give us a lot of money and we could do it. You could write it. I'll be somebody.
I think that at this point there is, because of the Disneyfication of Star Wars, and
you probably wouldn't be able to do it now.
Not only would you not be able to get away with it, but like, there's so much that there used to be a time when you would watch Star Wars and you would speculate about, like, a character or a background character or what happened before. Not only did they fill in all the gaps with all the crap from, like, card games and books and novels and comics and all that stuff, then after Disney, all that gets thrown away, but there's still shows, Clone Wars, Rebels,
which I love.
The other
Rebels is
Clone
awesome.
Wars cartoon, which is also really cool.
The Gendy Tartakovsky one, which is sadly not canon anymore, despite the fact how people will fight me on that one. It isn't anymore. That one's not counted amongst the canon.
That's too bad, because it was the only thing from the prequels that I liked.
Same here. And you actually find yourself in a weird position where it's like, well, what about all the stuff that kind of takes over from that Clone Wars to the other Clone Wars show? Apparently doesn't count anymore.
Yeah, like everybody who played a voice, or the General Grievous like coughing fit. That is the coolest moment, and it explains it almost apologizes for General Grievous.
Almost.
Because he's really cool in that show, and then he's really not.
He's amazing in those Clone Wars shorts. He's the goddamn Predator, is what he is. Just taking out Jedi left, right, and center. He's the coolest thing. Then you see the movie and you're like, oh, they didn't get the memo, did they?
No, he is lame. It's okay. In the General Grievous episode, he hunts down. He does what Vader takes 10 years to do in like an hour, and he hunts down and kills like all these Jedi. Then he gets to Mace Windu and Yoda. And Mace Windu's like, let's do this. And then General Grievous blasts out the 4 arms with the 4 lightsabers. And then Mace Windu just uses the Force and crushes his lungs.
Yep.
It's like, oh, right, I know how to use the freaking Force. At the end of the day, you're a robot who uses lightsabers, and I'm magic. Like...
I am a magic space monk. Look at my magic space monk.
Just what a cool moment! Like out of a show or out of a saga that I just had no respect for whatsoever. But there's so many cracks filled in. You know, it's almost impossible to really like do a story that hasn't been told in Star Wars at some point or another. The Force Awakens is the name of a Star Wars fan film. Like
it is. It really is.
I do. You know what? Let's talk about the Star Wars fan film for a second, because
there's a lot of them. There was a whole cottage industry that sprung up in the time between the originals and the prequels when we didn't think we'd be getting any more Star Wars.
Yes, when we thought there was never going to be any more Star Wars, and we were just going to get 3 movies, a terrible holiday special.
Oh yeah,
and Shadows of the Empire, which is like a threatened movie. Like, man, when that phenomenon hit. The expectation of there being a Star Wars animated movie starring the original cast was like everyone was expecting it to happen, and then nothing.
Would have been cool.
Would have been really cool. Sadly, no. And also,
the chat was quick to bring up the fan film, the Cops parody Troops. Yeah, that was pretty good. That was the first one I ever saw.
Troops is one of the first ones I ever saw. Troops is amazing, not only because of its parody and its like cleverness, but because it launched the career of the guy who created it. And he did an amazing Star Wars Dark Horse miniseries, which you need to see. If you like Star Wars, if you love Star Wars, and you could even like the prequels, but if you prefer the old ones and enjoy the prequels in some way, then I implore you to go look up Tag and Bink Are Dead. It is a play on Rosencrantz and Guildenstern.
I was just about to say.
But Tag and Bink Are Dead is about 2 guys
who are there at every big moment.
And how their bumbling adventures set everything in motion. The best joke...
And for those who don't know Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, just think Lion King 1/2, because that's the same joke.
There's a great movie starring Dick Dreyfuss and Tim Roth that is an adaptation of it. It's a Tom Stoppard play that is kind of like Waiting for Godot, but in Shakespeare. Takes 2 side characters from Hamlet and gives them their own story, and it's a spectacular story.
Taken from the one line they had in the play where it's like, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead.
Well, they're in it, and they have a couple of lines, but then Hamlet sets them up and has them slaughtered. And and then Tom Stoppard's like, let me make a whole friggin' thing about that. But super duper cool. But Tag and Bink Are Dead is an amazing comic. You've got to read it, but there's a great joke about it. If you ever watch Return of the Jedi, there's a moment where Mon Mothma talks about the plans to the second Death Star, and she says, many Bothans died to bring us this information. And at that point, no one had ever seen or heard of a Bothan in their lives.
It's true.
Never referenced.
It was just a gibberish word.
Yeah, many Bothans died to bring us this information, and Mon Mothma has like an oddly specific emotional response to it. You're like, what the hell is Mon Mothma's stake in these freaking Bothans?
Can I say I've always been fascinated by the character of Mon Mothma? I've always really liked her, and she, your eye was always drawn to her because she was only like one of 3 women characters.
Yes,
in
and
all
one of them
New
was a
Hope.
Twi'lek that got eaten by a Rancor.
Yep.
But in Tag and Bink Are Dead, Tag with a rebel spy, one rebel spy, who brings them the Death Star plans, and his name is Manny. Manny Bothhands. And sadly, Manny Bothhands was killed bringing them the information, and he was a really, really good friend of Mon Mothma.
Poor guy.
Amazing joke. Just so great. You should definitely go pick it up. I don't know where it is anymore, but I'm sure
people can find it in this internet age.
Yeah, but just go look for it because it's spectacular.
Also, the stream died for just a second there, I think,
No.
but we're back now. It's fine.
Well, don't worry. It's fine.
It's fine. Everything is fine. Nothing's fucked. Everything's
Yes.
fine.
Everything's fine. Everything's perfectly all right here. Now, thank you. How are you?
There was a disturbance in the force, but we corrected it.
Can you repeat that? We missed everything. Just go by Tag and Bink Are Dead. I think it's a 2 or 3 issue miniseries, and then they did a supplement issue after the prequels came out to explain the ending a little bit better.
Right.
It's really fun. So go check it out.
Someone in the chat just had Sal and Joel are dead now.
Because of the stream. It's amazing.
Good on you, Nimrod Canada. Good on you.
But yeah, so let's see. What any other thoughts about Star Wars? It's a celebration. What's your favorite thing about Star Wars, Joel?
Man, I think when I really break it down, it is the whole identity thing. It is the whole cultural thing that sprung up around Star Wars. Like I said, I think it was very influential in geek culture, Star Wars culture. I think again, that we're talking about the lore, but it's more than just the lore. Like the whole Jedi ideals before they were, of course, ruined in the prequels. I love this idea of the Force, this pseudo-religious thing, and yet something that broke down all borders and could be true to every single person out there. Where it's like the Force surrounds us, it penetrates us,
It's created by life. Like life creates it.
It's a beautiful sentiment.
Yeah. For me, I like the unifying nature that Star Wars used to be.
Yes.
Star Wars brought me my best friend of 10 years. It connected me with different people on the same level in a really, really profound way. It created languages. It was the way in which I found people with whom I share a life, and I am indebted to Star Wars in profound and personal ways that I can't even begin to express. Even as Star Wars began to change, grow, evolve, and betray me.
And then kind of come back to
a little bit. The new one is the new one. I was critical, but I still enjoyed the shit out of it.
And the new comics are good, and Rebels is great, and that's in the new continuity.
I liked Rebels as well. There's so much about Star Wars that I think still allows things to be unified, but I think that it's not Star Wars' fault that it's not as unifying as it used to be. I think it's more.
It happens when you get bigger and more popular.
Well, I think it's the internet. I think it's the splinterification of nerd culture in general.
Right.
It used to be that even if you it used to be nerds would argue over Star Wars versus Star Trek.
Yeah.
Now it's original trilogy versus prequel trilogy.
It's true.
But then it's prequel trilogy versus new trilogy. And then it's original trilogy special editions versus original trilogy not special edition. There's so much that just picks that splinters it into different factions. It used to be 2 camps. Then now there's 600 camps.
We have more to fight about now than ever, which is kind of the problem with having more than ever. Heck, there's even fights going on. I'm a big fan of Rebels. Didn't love Clone Wars that much. I can't tell you how many fights I've gotten into between Rebels and Clone Wars.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I rejected Clone Wars out of hand because it was connected to the prequels.
Same here. Now, that being said, because I like Rebels so much and because Season 2 touched on a lot of the stuff from Clone Wars, I went back and watched better Clone Wars episodes. I'm like, okay, these are fine, but I still care more about the characters in Rebels because they're original.
Yes. The way in which Star Wars changed and splintered and divided fans, like, I know that I can't really connect with people now the way I did when it was different. And so it represents a very, very specific time in my life, and for that I will be eternally grateful. Like, I'll always love Star Wars for many different reasons. I used to watch Empire Strikes Back when I was sick. That was my sick movie. If I'm sick, I throw on Empire and I just lie in bed and I watch Yoda train Luke. I watch Luke get better, and as Luke gets better, I get better. And it's just, that is a very meaningful experience that I know is, very specific, but, like, I think that, people...
Someone in the chat just said, don't forget Porkins. Porkins gave his life for all of us.
I fucking love, going back to Wizard Magazine, they used to make fun of Porkins, and I, like, didn't even know... Like, when I was a kid and I watched Star Wars, I didn't even notice the really, really fat Rebel pilot. Then Wizard made the joke to the nth degree, where they made their own Porkins figure, and he was like a customized X-wing fighter pilot.
Nice.
But his shirt didn't fit, and he had like a hairy gut, and they always had like a little bag of chips in his hand.
Sweet.
And they made Porkins like comment on things or not fit in place. It was just a terrible fat joke with a Star Wars skin on it. Hilarious to an 11-year-old. Hilarious to a much older person. It's amazing. I like. There's also, I think somebody did a great like recut of Star Wars where Porkins just keeps dying.
Nice. The Porkins death cut.
Yeah, Porkins is so fucking funny. Porkins is Eckhart from Batman 1989.
That's right, he is.
And that guy is somebody else. I think he's the Washington bureaucrat in Raiders of the Lost Ark at the end who says "top men" with the pipe in his
Nice.
Amazing. So yeah. Anyway, like, I don't want to end it on Porkins. Joel, what else can we say about Star Wars before we wrap up the show?
I think that Porkins is great, and Porkins will live on forever in our hearts.
Porkins sucks.
Okay. Here's a good one. I got a real one here.
Okay.
Who in the Star Wars universe? What group did you always want to be / join? And what group / faction do you think you would actually be part of in real life? Go.
As a kid, I always wanted to be a Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
But
who didn't?
Yeah, but I always had a soft spot for like Han.
Oh yeah, the smuggler lifestyle is great. It's like modern cowboys. It's everything that Firefly would become.
Exactly. I think that I would want to be a rebel. I think I would end up being a moisture farmer.
Yeah, that's where we go. I mean, hey, for all we know, there's like a great, podcast throughout the Star Wars universe. Hey, you're listening to the Space Cast, everybody.
Yeah, you're welcome to Tatooine Radio.
Yeah, that could be us, or maybe not to let myself on as like a horrible collaborator or something, where it's like, oh, look over there, it's Arch Governor Daly of the Empire. Hey, everybody, just coming today to say you gotta pay your taxes.
Don't forget to pay your taxes, and hey, don't forget the Empire is always hiring for stormtroopers.
It's true. I wouldn't be one of the evil type Empire dudes. I wouldn't be a trooper. I wouldn't be out there shooting people, but I'd be one of those shitty imperial governors is what I'd be. I'd be one of those guys.
Oh, one of the regional governors who had direct control over the system.
I'd be one of those guys where it's like, dude, come on, you used to be cool, man. We went to high school together, then you sold out to the Empire, and now you're ruling over us. What the hell, man?
Yeah. That's a great question. You know what? I'm going to throw it to the chat on the post-show. If you're watching the show after it's live, let us know in the comment section down below. What faction would you want to be, and what faction do you think? I want to be a Jedi, but I'll probably be, Lobot.
Nah, I'd be one of those dudes drinking in the cantina, listening to the Jizz Whalers is what I'd be doing. I'd be one of those guys. Or hey, Salacious Crumb, that's a good Jedi.
Yeah, that's a good. It's a good gig. You know, he probably had a good 50 years of just
You're sure he did?
yeah, of getting Jabba's sloppy seconds. That's
Right.
that's the
Just
worst
all
thing.
day, every day.
That's the worst thing. We always say something horrible in this show, and that I think was it.
Who do you think is lower on the totem pole? Obviously, Salacious Crumb, who is basically just like a parrot who's eating the droppings
Yes.
of Jabba when he can't get it all in his mouth. Or the other dude, the squid-headed dude. His name escapes me at the moment. I used to know this.
Oh, from you mean Bib Fortuna?
Bib Fortuna. Yeah, who do you think's lower on the totem pole? Salacious Crumb or Bib Fortuna? 'Cause
Salacious
Bib was
Crumb-
getting the door.
I mean, like, Salacious Crumb doesn't have to do anything.
No, not really.
Like, Salacious Crumb takes no orders. So I guess Salacious Crumb,
Higher
although
on the totem pole.
I mean, like, Bib Fortuna,
Has clothes.
yes, but Salacious Crumb doesn't need clothes. He
Assumedly.
Salacious Crumb is more like a hedonism character. He represents
He's more like
this-
a pet. Maybe he's not even a person.
Yeah, I don't think Salacious Crumb is a person. He is just a pet. He's just a more conscious pet than others.
But he laughs, so he clearly has a sense of humor, unless that's just how his race talks and laughs.
Yeah, this guy gets it. No, that's just the sound he makes every 5 seconds.
Turns out that guy never thought anything was funny. He just does that every 3 minutes.
That's how he breathes.
and that's why Jabba had him, where he's like, good, finally, someone who will always laugh at my jokes. You get to sit right here.
It's true. The Hutt really does appreciate a good chuckle every once in a while. I mean,
Oh. Man, another crappy job in the Star Wars universe having to be that Rancor Wrangler. Although that guy genuinely seemed to love his job, didn't he?
That guy loved his Rancor, that poor son of a bitch.
That poor guy. Man, just what an odd, sympathetic moment there. It was like, we're going to kill you, Jedi. Oh, man, that dude's pet just died.
Yeah, that really sucks. What a weird moment to make real in that thing. He's literally it's a Jason and the Argonauts moment. It's a moment where like Luke has to battle the monster, and then this poor fat man.
No.
His like it's just and then of course as the Rancor's dying, pinned by the port cutlass, it makes a sad dog sound effect.
It does, this horrible death monster that's a boss in every one of the video games.
Yep, makes it like a poor, sad, sick dog sound, just to reinforce the point that it sucks this Rancor died. That death is random and it hurts. It affects everyone. Like
and heck, in some of the continuities too, Rancors are endangered. They're hard to find.
yeah, that's true.
Way to go, Luke. Way to kill an endangered species, you dick.
I don't remember what comic I read, but there was a comic where Jabba had one of those terrible, stupid monsters from Attack of the Clones, from the Gladiator scene.
Oh God, yeah.
And it dies or gets like blown up or something. And then Jabba's like, we need a new thing we need a new monster for the pit. Perhaps a Rancor. Star Wars is full of those like wink wink obvious reference kind of jokes. Can I just say, do you remember Attack of the Clones when like they open all the gates? That was my last hope for that whole goddamn series.
Your last New Hope.
When I went, oh man, at least we'll get to see a Rancor.
Yeah, I know, right?
And then we don't see a Rancor.
Here's a bunch of new stupid monsters that aren't as cool as the puppet.
We see an evil cat, we see a stupid rhino, and we see like something out of Planet fucking Hulk. Like, god damn it.
because Gladiator was big that year and we needed to have something, that could stand up with it.
Yep. We didn't, George. Don't go to the movies. Just make one. Stop going to the movies.
And stop getting ideas.
Yeah, ideas. That's like going to see a Quentin Tarantino movie and being like, I think I want to do a crime movie about a bunch of hilarious people who are all very different but also equally terrible. Like,
and one guy doesn't want a tip.
yeah. God damn it. Anyway, May the 4th, it's a celebration of Star Wars. I think that, I have a real problem with, like, Hallmark-generated bullshit holidays, but you know what? Like, meaning comes from many different corners of the world. Star Wars, for example. And it should be no different and no less meaningful. So, use the May the 4th to celebrate that which unifies us all. This is the time when we all, like, we can recapture that moment that I talked about previously, where we're so splintered and we're all divided.
Oh, yeah.
May the 4th could mean something to us in as much as it could unify Star Wars fans in a profound and fundamental way.
That's what it should mean. In fact, let's say that right now. On May the 4th, all the different Star Wars factions and tribes, let us put our differences aside on this day and one day only from this point forward.
Yes, we'd all just acknowledge that we love Star Wars. There's no asterisk, there's no, like, wink or, like, crossed fingers. It's just, I like Star Wars, and if you do too, there's something that we share, and that makes us part of a community.
Totally.
That means something. So, anyway, that's it. So, I want to thank you guys for hanging out with us. I want to thank my co-host Joel, of course, for being here as always. If you want to check out Joel, there's a link in the description box below this video where you can go to his channel. Joel, what's happening on Cape Joel this week that everybody can go check out?
Well, like I say every week, if you head on over to my channel right now, you can check out the newest episode of the Comic Multiverse. That's the show I do with my old Blood Sweat comic host, Matt. Had a fun episode this week. We talked about a bunch of different stuff there. Also, as soon as I'm done this, I'm going to finish editing my review for the new Punisher from Becky Cloonan, so be sure to check that out later tonight.
Nice.
Did you get a chance to read that one yet?
I did not. I want to, though, because Tiffany was recommending it on Off the Rack. I got to check it out.
I won't spoil it. It's very fun. They do something quite interesting with Frank in the first issue.
Good. I should hope so. We over here on ComicPOP launched, it might be the last episode of Dark Knight 3 WTF.
I saw that. I saw how depressed you all were when you started.
It's just
You're like, you know what? Screw it.
Just who cares? I mean, like, but there was a lot of, like, people asking for us not to end the show, and the fact is, the book comes out so infrequently that, like, it doesn't really hurt anybody to make it a part of the show.
It really does, and that's the worst part, where it's like you were all gung-ho for it when you start like, yeah, you know, this is so cool and so important, this needs its own show just for it is what it needs.
Yep. No, it doesn't deserve it, but we might give it a twin anyway. So DK3 WTF episode 4 came out today. Tonight, in the next couple of hours, we will release tomorrow's back issues, which is on Fallen Sun, The Death of Captain America, because I have a sneaking suspicion it might be relevant. I don't know. I didn't see it. I'm not spoiling the movie. Don't spoil the movie in the chat. I don't know if it's.
I see the movie Friday.
I'm seeing it tomorrow.
Lucky you.
I can't wait.
Damn my small town theater and not having midnight showings.
That's bullshit. Every theater should do a midnight showing for movies like this.
It's true, but you know what? It's going to be a nice double shot for me because I'm going to go see the movie on Friday, then Saturday I'm going to go do Free Comic Book Day.
Nice. And of course, Free Comic Book Day is on Saturday, everybody. Go to your local comic book store, patronize their stores, pick up their wares. They're probably going to do some sales. It's going to be a lot of great issues.
Support your brick and mortars, yo.
Support your comic book stores. And if you're going to be at Dewey's Comic City, maybe we'll stop by. Who knows? Anyway, that's it from us here on ComicPOP. I want to thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.
Bye-bye.